Welcome to Side Hustle City, and thanks for joining us. Our goal is to help you connect to real people who found success turning their side hustle into a main hustle, and we hope you can too. I'm Adam Kaler. I'm joined by Kyle Stevie, my co-host. Let's get started. All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Side Hustle City podcast. Today we have a special guest, Stuart Rabkin, buddy of mine. How you doing, Stuart?
Doing great, Adam.
So Stuart has had a awesome career, and I wanted to bring him on today because I know there's a lot of you out there who may be starting your career in the corporate world, or you've been in the corporate world for a long time. And one thing Stuart has done he's leveraged his corporate experience into a very profitable, not just financially, but freedom-wise consulting business, and, leveraged his network of people that he's met over the years in and out of his corporate jobs. And I wanted to bring him on today because there's a lot of you out there who may just be starting out your corporate career. And there's some things that Stuart could bring to the table here and explain to you the things you should probably think of as you're starting out your career. What does your life look like 20 years from now? Do you want to be working that 9-to-5 job? Do you want to be in that corporate world? Or do you want to take control of your business, take control of your experience, take control of your network, and create something bigger? And we're going to talk about those opportunities and what drove Stuart to think about those kind of opportunities and do what he's doing now. So welcome to the podcast, Stuart.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So we've done a lot of things together, random things. You come in here all the time with your business people into CovWorks, and you go in your conference room. I don't know what's going on in there, but you're talking about important stuff, I could tell. So explain a little bit about your background. What's your education? Why did you get into what kind of career path did you take?
So I have a bachelor's in psychology from the University of Denver. Of course, immediately went to work on Wall Street after I graduated. And my family has always been very entrepreneurial. My father owned real estate, did development, nursing homes, assisted living facilities. So was always part of a family that really was non-traditional in their approach to work. Although my father had a good law career, but he ended that quickly and went into business. And so I think early on in my life, I saw a different path.
You had experience, like you saw, like somebody in your life was like, "Hey, here's what I'm doing," and you're like, "Oh, that's really cool." Like you leave a law career to become an entrepreneur. That's saying something.
Yeah. I think it kind of goes to the topic that we're covering today, which is, what skill sets do you build earlier on, and then how do you apply those to maximize them for your lifestyle, your income, the way that the businesses that you want to be in, the flexibility and ability to look at different opportunities and deals. And it's non-traditional, but and sometimes can be very, very profitable and have a good outcome. Other times, you learn from your mistakes.
Yeah. And that actually could be the best opportunities is when you learn from your mistakes. You don't see them as pushing you backwards. You actually take what you learned and use that for something positive.
Right. And having made mistakes, of course, teaches you resiliency and the ability to recover and refocus and center yourself on where the real opportunity then emerges out of those mistakes.
Oh yeah. So now, okay. So psychology, what made you want to go to school for psych? I didn't even know this, that you were like a psych major.
In all honesty, I went to school for hotel restaurant management, University of Denver, and determined that I liked eating in restaurants and staying in hotels better than working in them. And so I had made my way through a fair amount of that curriculum and pivoted and realized that, well, undergrad is just a way to cultivate your interpersonal skills and hone your thinking and analytical skills more than what the topic is that you study.
So did you go on and get like a master's degree or any of that other kind of stuff? So you weren't like this academic, like you didn't go in and just say, look, I'm going to get a PhD. I'm going to do all this. You did all the stuff you accomplished with a bachelor degree.
Yes. In retrospect, it might've been interesting to go back and get an MBA, but I feel like, the life experience that I've had has been an MBA plus. I think that if you have a nose for business and relationships and network building, those are some of the core skill sets that are most important. If you want to take a traditional career path and rise through the ranks in a big Fortune 500 company, certainly an MBA is a prerequisite these days. But
is it really that important? I mean, I know that there's a lot of, is that just a box they check off? They're like, oh, MBA, check the box. Or is it like, hey, I want to go to, if I'm going to get an MBA, I want to go to a top 20 business school locally, maybe like a Kelley School of Business. Like, would I go to UC? Would I go to Xavier? Probably not, because they're not as highly ranked. I'd go to a Kelley School of Business because it's close. Or maybe even go up to Michigan, to Ann Arbor. They've got a great business school. Or even Ohio State has a great business school. But if I want the elite job, do I go to Penn?
Yeah, an Ivy clearly is.
You'd have to go to an Ivy League, right? Cornell or something like that.
But whether you are pursuing an entrepreneurial path or a corporate, traditional career path, certainly an MBA from a top school lets you into the club, right? It's about the networks
It's like a fraternity, right? I went to Penn. Oh, I went to Penn.
So I didn't do that. I plowed my way through a different way, through a more entrepreneurial kind of approach. And it's been a good journey, and loving what I'm doing these days.
I love it. So you went to, and there's a lot of people out there who got a bachelor's degree, maybe in business, communications, whatever. They're working in corporate now. Maybe they're managing a brand at like a Procter, or they're at Kroger or wherever locally here, or whatever big corporation is in your city, right? If you don't go the academic route and say, hey, one day I want to be a professor, I actually want to do the work, not just be in college forever. There's a lot of folks out there that are like, hey, I'm just starting out my career. What can Stuart teach me? What has Stuart done, right? Explain to them what did you do when you took that Wall Street job? What was your job on Wall Street?
I was a very entry level, low level job. I worked for Shearson Lehman Brothers.
Oh, Lehman.
And I was an operations analyst. I basically analyzed corporate leases where Shearson's retail operation had signed leases with many different real estate owners around the world to conduct their retail business out of. Okay. And so a lot of them the owners were very liberal in what they passed through as operating expenses and whatnot. So you really had to stay on top of those leases and understand where you might be spending more than you had agreed to in the lease.
Gotcha.
As well as renewals and tax payments and all the rest. But really what was interesting was that they invested a lot in, back in the day, Lotus 1, 2, 3, and all of those like suite of products.
Old Lotus Notes.
Yep. Even before that. And what I figured out was that I could automate my job and do my full 8-hour job in about 2 hours, because they basically taught me how to do that through the spreadsheet classes that I took. And so, and going back to your point about seeing an opportunity and being more entrepreneurial, I built a whole recycling program for the company. With the other time that I had. So
it wasn't like you were sitting there playing around, like you're taking long lunches or whatever. Was this job in New York?
Yeah, in the city.
Okay, so you were in Manhattan, and you weren't just like wandering around the city for 6 hours a day. You're like, hey, look, they're paying me for 8 hours. I'm going to work 8 hours or whatever. I mean, if you were on salary, you're probably working 10 hours. But so you created this recycle program for the actual company for the commercial properties, or how did that work?
Actually, it was for the corporate offices in Manhattan.
Okay.
And I wound up cutting a deal with the V. Ponte and Sons, who were probably the mafia garbage removal people.
They're involved in that trade.
Did a deal with the We Can people, who were the homeless organization that helped recycle aluminum cans and plastic bottles and whatnot, and channeled funds their way. So, built this whole program for the company. And interestingly, it wound up saving them about $600,000 a year.
Whoa.
So,
and you weren't getting paid $600,000 a year. This was your entry level gig, right?
Exactly. But being curious and looking for opportunities and, connecting the dots is really a kind of a critical skill set that college and other things, of course, teach you.
Do you teach your daughter this? Because the younger generations, I don't think you don't just go to your job. Like, you don't go in, they're not blessed by your being there, right? You're there to do something. And the more value you can add to the job, the better it's going to be. And actually that is probably how you started building your network, because by doing that, you saved this company $600,000. They look at you through a different lens now. You're not just Stuart Rabkin, guy who has to go through spreadsheets all day at Lehman. You're Stuart Rabkin, guy who went through spreadsheets and created this money-saving recycle program for the company.
Yeah, I got some good press. I was on CNN. And
wow.
It was kind of fun. And I went around to all of the executives in the company and presented the new program. We removed all the styrofoam cups and created branded mugs and all sorts of things. So I had this canned pitch that I went around from executive team to executive team and presented. So that was kind of fun.
That's cool.
So about my daughter, I guess I try to teach her as much as possible, but there's teaching and there's doing. And maybe I'm older now, but maybe this generation is a little bit different. I remember growing up, and if I wanted something, I didn't go to my parents and just ask for it. I packed up my little Red Wagon at 8 or 9 years old and carried it, wheeled it around the neighborhood and knocked on people's doors and asked them if I could clean their windows or do whatever. So. I
love that. I had a Red Wagon too, but I used to take my Red Wagon, my little radio flyer, the metal one. I used to take it up the hill because not many people in my neighborhood could leave. Like their parents wouldn't let them leave the yard or whatever. It was also Price Hill. So my mom was like, just don't get arrested. And I'm like 9. And I would take it up to Sohio, the gas station. Now it's BP. And I would buy Now and Laters, packs of Now and Laters and lemon heads and things like that. And they were 5 cents? Yeah, they were 5 cents back then. And I'd bring them down to the neighborhood and sell them for $0.25. So the kids would get we didn't get an allowance because we were poor, but all the other kids in the neighborhood, a lot of them would get an allowance, or the ice cream man would come and they'd get money for that. So they'd spend their allowance money on my candy. So it was like my little side hustle, but the radio flyer, the Red Wagon.
That's right.
Yeah.
I had a buddy in high school who my high school wouldn't allow soft drinks or caffeine at all. And he would pack his locker full of sodas, and the teachers would actually buy from him.
What?
Yeah, it was hilarious.
You were like, you realize these kids at the school the productivity could be this much higher. Like you should have sold that in, like you sold the recycle program. Productivity by the students, if you allowed caffeine, would go up to this level. Yeah.
So, I mean, like you look for opportunities where there's a void in services or products or those types of things. And that's a lot of the work that I do and my colleagues and I do together with our client base.
So that win that you had with the recycle thing, you got all this attention, you're young, you're just maybe a couple years out of school or whatever at that point. That actually said, hey, look, you probably looked at yourself and were like, wow, this is a big company and I just made a major financial impact. There's something here that I have that not everybody has, right? That must have been an eye-opening experience for you.
I don't know that I really recognized it at the time, but I was bored. Asked my manager for more work. They didn't really have it, so I looked for an opportunity to go do something that was mentally stimulating and good for the company.
Yeah, and there was an opportunity, and you were. I mean, were you doing it at the time to advance your career? Or were you just like, there's nothing else going on?
Nothing else going on. We wound up getting like a cool. I had a couple of folks that were helping me with it, but we wound up getting a cool award or something for it. But that wasn't the motivation.
Yeah. So opportunities, and that's one thing that I try to stress to people on the podcast here is there's opportunities everywhere. You just got to stay aware, and if you're in a big company, know that they want to save money or they want to make more money or whatever it is.
Or increase their brand or
whatever that is.
Reputation or whatever, yeah.
Yep. And there's opportunities to save them money or make them more money that's going to help elevate you as an employee there if that's what you choose to. Or you could just leave the company and start your own little business and then sell it back into them.
Sometimes that works.
Sometimes it works. Yeah, you never know. So, I mean, there's always those opportunities. The company could potentially take on your project financially as opposed to you leaving, trying to raise money for something and then selling it back in. But if you could be at the company and prove whatever that is at the company's probably going to own the IP on whatever it is you created because you're an employee there.
That's usually the case.
Yeah. So you're probably not going to make as much money, but if your goal is to work a 9 to 5 and eventually move up in that company, those are the kind of opportunities you should go after.
Yeah, I think if you're curious and can connect the dots and spot the opportunities and deliver that energy and that entrepreneurship internally certainly is valuable.
Yeah.
In your career in a corporate path and same skill sets on the outside, right? If you start your own gig, that you need to have that kind of lens on business and people, and especially network building is critical.
Yeah. I think one of the main things that helped me out with my advertising agency was working at a big agency and building a network. I mean, we had 350 people working there, pretty much together. I mean, you met with almost everybody there at some point. So everybody knew you, especially if you had an extroverted type of personality. People wanted to go to lunch with you, wanted to hang out with you, wanted to talk. You get to know people. And it's the agency world is, people leave all the time. And then they go off and become the marketing manager for some brand at P&G, or they become they work at Kroger, and they have some level of authority when it comes to marketing and where their dollars are spent. And I remember Adam, he was freelancing when he was working here.
They credential you, essentially.
And they're like, he's a cool dude. He delivers. I'll give him a call. It sounds like he owns his own agency now. Why don't we call him? And that happens, and it spreads, and you do a good job for them. They talk to the next person, or they leave there and they go off to another place, and now they've got even more authority at this other place. So, I mean, that's how my agency was built, was by working in corporate and then leveraging that for projects and, business. And I didn't know what I was doing. It just kind of happened that way.
So one thing that I think is for those people who are really interested in ultimately doing something on their own, I can't stress enough the value in working for a bigger company initially, earlier in your career. Teaches you discipline, teaches you skills that you don't have, processes, methods, exposure to different aspects of business that are really helpful going forward if you were to step out on your own and create your own.
Also kind of teaches you things that you never thought it would teach you. You dress professionally. You get exposure to other people who say you don't come from a nice neighborhood or, a professional family or whatever. you can watch these other people and how they present themselves and how they act and how they dress. You know, I didn't know what the hell dress casual was. Like, I mean, I'm in sweatpants and stuff right now, you know, but
well, isn't everyone?
I would love, yeah, right now everybody pretty much is. But, you know, you go to Procter, I mean, everybody's in a polo, you know, in the summer, and they got their khaki pants on and their brown shoes.
Certainly, you know, better presence. Certainly.
Yeah, there's a look, right? That you know, this professional look. But if you don't come from that kind of environment, those are some of the things you learn outside of how does business work? You know, what are these different aspects of business? What's an HR department? You know, I mean, that stuff some people just have no idea exists before they start their corporate life. You know, I mean, they just got done binge drinking at parties, you know, when they were in college. And next thing you know, they have to wake up at 7:30 in the morning and get to work, you know?
I have to believe that there's more awareness now with social media and you know, I remember
there's so much information out there on
YouTube.
YouTube.
A lot of information on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, wherever you look, there's something, right? You know, you probably remember this. They had Dress for Success classes and all of that bit. I don't even know if those things happen anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I went to the inner city school, so they were like, yeah, here's how you do this and that. But then you had to have the money to buy that stuff, you know?
Yeah, true.
So that was a little rough. So after the Lehman thing, and how long did you stay at that job?
I was just in the city for a couple of years.
Okay. And then what did you do after that?
My family owned a nursing home business here in Cincinnati, so I came back and got my nursing home administrator's license and worked in that until we sold it in the late 90s.
Oh, wow. So you did that for a while then.
From 91 to 99.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's a lot longer than most people stay at their jobs nowadays.
But what was interesting was that while the company required careful operation because you're caring for people's health, I had a bigger interest in how could you automate, scale, drive efficiencies, harness the emerging internet technology that was coming into play 1995, 96, 97. And I created a small ISP and consulting company while I was working, in the family business.
Oh, wow.
And probably before its time, but but it really was a innovation eye opener in terms of what we now take for granted in our iPhones and apps and ubiquitous connectivity. So I was hosting Exchange for multiple companies in 1997.
Oh, wow. So you bought a server, you're hosting their email.
10 servers, was hosting email, websites, all of that bit.
Wow.
Yep.
Were you making pretty good money on the side? I mean,
making some money, but
it was pretty passive though, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I was really doing it more for our company because I created an intranet for all of the standards of care and all of those kinds of things that the nurses and everybody used internally, and started to turn it, outward. But it was just so far ahead of anybody's thinking at the time, particularly in the healthcare industry, that it was an idea too soon. But it really sparked my quest and craving for technology innovation and creating a different way to do things. Yeah. And so I joined a consulting firm. It was called Whitman Hart back in the day.
Oh, Whitman Hart.
And co-led a strategy group that did that for mostly mid-market manufacturing and other companies.
Man, a lot of people came out of Whitman Hart.
Yeah, it's really a good fraternity and sorority. A lot of us are still very much in touch with each other.
Oh, they're all floating around here still. Yeah, I know a bunch of people that were Whitman Hart. Yeah, Ben Jenda, Jason Langdon, two of them that just jump off at the top of my head. And they all ended up working at like Possible, which was Bridge Worldwide back in the day. And then it became Possible. And now it's Gray Cincinnati. Right. But that was my network, and a lot of those Whitman Hart guys came over and started working at our agency. And this is a small town. Like, it's very incestuous. Like everybody that's in the agency world bounces around the different agencies, or they work at Procter, and they'll just go through that little, I think the hot spot now is Kroger. It seems like everybody works at Kroger Innovation or whatever. But that's
a
just
great group of people.
Oh, really good. Yeah.
And what was cool about that was that we did a ton of work in startups as well as mid-market companies. And one of the wildest things was we took a client through Guy Kawasaki's Garagecom program at the time, which was a angel accelerator program in Silicon Valley. And I think they were funded $5.7 million in angel funding at the time,
which was like a fortune back then.
Crazy,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And we actually I went to Cannes in the south of France where they launched the company.
The awards. Yeah.
No, the company.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about the Cannes Lion Award.
No.
Okay.
This was they chose this trade show in Cannes to launch the company.
Wow. Okay.
So what was really awesome, and it really ties back to being entrepreneurial and identifying opportunities, was this living in this whole startup world and, being super creative and connecting disparate dots and figuring out how to put the technology, business model, marketing, operations components together for all these different types of ventures. And we probably read, I don't know, hundreds of business plans at the time because everybody was trying to .com their ideas and businesses.
Oh, of course.
Of which, the majority of them failed or didn't get off the ground. But it was a real eye opener in terms of just business innovation and possibilities.
So a little bit about crypto and blockchain, and a little bit about, NFTs. You wrap your head around it.
Yep.
What are the similarities? Because I see a lot of similarities. History tends to repeat itself, right?
Sure does.
When it comes to the .com boom, everybody and their mom had a .com. Most of them failed, right? Just like a lot of these crypto blockchain based, tokenized businesses, they come and they go, right? There's a few of them that have lasted. I mean, I've been paying attention since probably 2016, 2017. And every wave, some of them go away and then new ones pop up on the next wave. Very similar to the .com thing, except the .com thing was one big, massive clean out.
It was also fueled by the Y2K
true.
boom as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I see a lot of similarities. Just take NFTs, for example, and certainly crypto is the underlying monetary system that drives NFTs. There are all these projects, right? And there are a ton of examples now where there's fraud or people are doing a cash grab where they'll launch something and then kill the project and take the profit. It's putting a black eye on the industry a bit right now. But where the interesting parallel is, in my mind, and I'm not an expert, it's just my observation to the .com boom, is that the underlying technology and the use of the technology will find its way into mainstream business. So while it might be cool to own a CryptoPunk or an ape or something along those lines, and those brands I think have a real fighting chance to stay
because they're early and
they're building community and all sorts of things around them. But when you start to do things like Super Bowl tickets in NFTs, where there's little to no chance that those tickets could be defrauded or counterfeited, those are real applications.
Oh yeah.
Versus the art world, which is subjective in terms of value and whatnot. I think there are some cool projects that certainly.
Or there's NFT drops from the NFL, the NBA. There was a Wayne Gretzky drop on, I can't remember which one it was, autograph.com or something like that. I mean, those are limited edition NFTs. There's only going to be so many of them. And yes, they're digital. And yes, you could take a screenshot of it, but you don't own the actual real version on the blockchain if you do that.
Right. But what does that get you? Yeah. Does it get you access to a club? Does it get you access to offers that you wouldn't ordinarily get? Does it give you access to a network of people?
Right.
What's the means to the end to it?
Yeah.
Anti-counterfeiting has a clear value in business.
Oh yeah. Well, especially like think about the wine industry, some of the stuff that goes on there. Even olive oil. Like half the time you don't even know if the olive oil is real olive oil, because, there's
honey,
honey,
fish,
all that.
All of that.
Yeah. And you need to be able to track it all along the way, from the olive grove all the way into that bottle sitting on the shelf at Kroger.
So and I think there's a movement into marrying NFTs with physical products to, take, I don't know, Louis Vuitton or Chanel or some big designer brand like that, where there's a lot of counterfeit. That I think there's a movement into using that technology.
Like a certificate of authenticity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I think we're going to see a lot of fallout. And then ultimately, like in the .com era, the emerging applications will be really, business beneficial.
Well, I know you're working on some NFT stuff on your own, but probably a lot out of curiosity, how does this work? But also as a consultant, as a business consultant, you have to stay on top of this stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, these are the things that, because you're a consultant, people hold you essentially responsible for understanding what's going on in the world if they live in these little bubbles inside their corporation. Like there's only so much they're exposed to. They've got a 9 to 5 job
every day.
They're doing their job every day, right? And they need folks like you who are on the outside who say, look, I saw Pepsi did this the other day. Now I'm noticing the NFL's doing this and, the tickets, and it makes sense because they're building a community and you can do this and they're like, whoa, like life is passing them by. These trends are passing them by, and they need consultants. They need folks that speak their language, but have their ear to the ground.
Yeah, and to not do it in a disingenuous way. Really, if you're a trusted advisor to your clients, you're looking and scanning and bringing things that are interesting to building their business or their capability or function. So, it's cool to be on the outside and be able to dip your fingers and toes into all sorts of different things, and then asking yourself, well, how does this apply to a Fortune 500 company or, the supply chain leader in a Fortune 500 company or somebody along those lines?
Yeah. Or how do I make them look smart? Make them in their next board meeting or whatever they're having or team meeting. Hey, hired this consultant. This is what we learned. This is how I think we can apply it. Boom. And it could help, accelerate, or these companies stay on top of these trends that may otherwise pass them right by. Mm-hmm. And then it's too late, AKA Xerox, right? Oh, the computer's a trend. Nobody's going to, and then next thing you know, the internet's a trend. Oh, nobody's going to use the internet. Who can afford that, And now look at us. Now we're connected. Now we can't stop being connected. We're freaking addicted to this stuff.
Right.
And it was going to be a trend for some people. So tell us a little bit about, so you worked at your family's business for a while. Mm-hmm. What did you do after that? Like, I mean, once that was done, you sold that, right? You guys sold that.
Yep.
So now you're out on the street.
Well, no, I'd already taken a position at Whitman Hart.
Oh, so you were at Whitman Hart. That's right. And you went to Whitman Hart. How long were you at Whitman Hart?
A couple of years until the .com bomb imploded. And so then I went on my own. Actually, I joined a colleague who I had co-led the strategy practice with at Whitman Hart, and we started our own firm, and actually went after mostly food and beverage, wellness type companies.
Okay,
and all growth and innovation strategy work.
Okay,
so new products, new services, new business models.
And this was was it an advertising agency?
Strategy consulting.
Consulting. Okay.
It was sort of McKinsey-esque, if you will, but scrappier and more entrepreneurial. One of the best experiences I had being on the outside, but on the inside, is I led a team of about 30 people from Chiquita at the time.
Oh, yes.
And we did the analysis to figure out whether or not bananas were viable to be sold outside the traditional grocery channels and club channels. So Starbucks and Circle K and all of those types of outlets.
Which now you see them at checkout counters.
All the time.
Yeah.
So led the business case development of that. And then, again, being scrappy, called Starbucks regional manager and was able to negotiate a 500 store test for the product.
Whoa.
And we put bananas in Starbucks.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was great. It was a lot of fun. So spent about a year and a half on that project.
And Starbucks is kind of like food poverty. Like you go in there and it's like you got great drinks, but the food's okay. Like you're not going to sit there and have a meal, like a real meal at Starbucks, you know? And, sometimes people are just in and out, and that's probably why. And they're like, hey, I want something healthy. You know, you got the little box salad thing or you got whatever. But I mean, you grab a banana, you eat it, toss the peel. Like, I mean, it's super simple. I mean, it made sense.
It did. And the leaders at Chiquita at the time, that was their hypothesis, and they wanted it to be figured out. So we helped them figure it out and actually get it executed.
And if it doesn't work, it could cost them a lot of money. So they need a firm like yours to come in and say, hey, show us the numbers, show us how this could work and what the strategy would be to get this in all these Starbucks.
So yeah, it was strategy, creation, validation, some technology decisions, because they needed to change the way that they ripened and packaged the bananas so it would go through the cold distribution system.
So there's like a logistics
it's a big
situation there too. Yeah, that you have to figure out.
Getting the sales organization on board because they're used to selling container loads, not less than truckloads of product. Big business model shifts in how they conducted business.
So it's good to have ideas, but you also have to understand how the business works. You have to understand how they're particular. And you may not have any. Did you have much experience in produce before that?
None.
So how do you figure that out? Like, how do you figure out how this business runs?
Well, they're the experts in the business. We were the outside catalyst to keep the drumbeat going and actually, get the product to market.
Gotcha. So you're asking a lot of questions.
Corralling the team, driving it forward, clarifying strategy, getting people on board.
Yeah.
Working with the customers, all of that.
So people are probably wondering, how the heck do people, like, why do they need you, right? And how do they find you? Because if I'm not familiar with consulting and I'm just thinking, I'm just a person who thinks in the 9-to-5 world, like okay, well, they need me to do this all day, right? I'm an HR professional, and I just sit here and I interview people all day, and I make sure, people aren't harassing each other at work, and I have put these rules in place. This is my job. As a consultant, how come these companies can't just find people internally? Why did they need your agency?
Well, they do have a lot of capability internally. A lot of times companies hire external people because they don't have that particular specialty, or they don't want to invest yet fully into staffing an initiative because it's too early. They want to test the waters and see if it, flies or dies. They may not have capacity they might have a big program. They don't have enough people with the right skill sets to get it done in the time frame that they need it to get it done in. There are a bunch of different drivers for externals. There are a gazillion different kinds of firms out there. So there's, of course, outsourcing people who do IT. There are strategy firms. There are logistics firms. Plenty of outside capability.
Yeah.
I fly more under the radar, so I try to work with a smaller group of big companies, and that way I'm able to spend more quality time with my clients.
I love it. And so a lot of people, depending on where they come from, if they're used to that 9-to-5 world, they've got the career, they're a corporate person, the confidence you have to have, because you're dealing with pretty high level people and you have to blend in with them as an equal. Is it difficult? Did you find it difficult to do that? Did you find it difficult to prove that you belonged and that they should listen to you?
Interesting. I don't know. I always felt that people were people, whatever their titles were. So it never really fazed me in particular. Being able to be smart in front of them, and that took a while, right? So you had to know your stuff. That's not something that comes overnight, clearly.
Yeah, because, you hear about this imposter syndrome. People may be smart, but they feel like they don't belong for whatever reason.
Right.
It could be where you come from. You're intimidated by the corporate world, or you're intimidated by, you don't know anybody who's a professional. You didn't grow up around that. You weren't essentially trained to. I actually read something one time where wealthy people, or people who grow up in better environments, they teach their kids to question authority. If you go to the doctor and the doctor says, "Hey, we think you've got this," speak up. "Hey, okay, well, I don't think I have that. I want a second opinion." Or, where people who grow up in an underserved community or whatever, they'll go in and they respect the doctor so much, they don't question what they say. They just see them as an authority figure and, okay, that's what I've got. Give me my antibiotics or whatever, right? So those folks dealing with corporate is probably a bigger leap, right? The confidence has to be there because you have to push back on these leaders a lot, I'm guessing.
How about pushback? I feel like it's more of a collaborative kind of conversation where you weigh the pros and cons or puts and calls, and together you wind up making good decisions. So it's about, at least for me, about challenging the status quo, questioning, working the problem or idea from every angle, and then offering what we think are the best possibilities going forward. So yeah, I don't see it as an adversarial type of interaction. It's very much collaborative. Certainly it does help to have a lot of experience in areas where you can bring a different perspective or a different lens. But at the end of the day, the clients are going to make the decisions that are best for their business, but it's our job as consultants to offer them the best we can in terms of what's out there, what's happening, different perspectives.
So you've jumped in and out of corporate also.
Yep.
What brought you back into corporate from your gig where you're working with, you're working with Starbucks, you're doing all this other stuff. What happened there and what drove you back into corporate?
So I worked for a consulting firm for 6 years up until the end of 2019. And they wound up packaging themselves up and breaking up and getting sold. And I left just before that and really kind of came to a crossroads of what I wanted to do. And I realized after just taking some time and digesting what the possibilities were that what was important, and it's different for everyone, but at least for me, it was important to work with really interesting and engaged clients, to work with people who I like, respect, who I want to continue to work with, have some autonomy in my schedule, the direction, the type of services and things that I wanted to offer. And, all of those things pointed to do it yourself or do it yourself, but together with a network of people, so that the 1 + 1 = 3 factor really, is the output, and have been able to do that, fairly successfully, working with several different organizations with, various specialties. And so we go to market depending on who the client is under a number of different entities, but we all work together virtually as a team. So
gotcha.
It's sort of the hybrid of the gig economy, right?
Okay.
And what's interesting is clients certainly clients are going to hire big name firms to do massive transformations and things like that. But where the boutiques and the specialties come in, it's really not even a question about how teams are put together and what entities come together to deliver what the ask is. So you could show up as a group of individuals, an individual, 3 LLCs, doesn't matter who's got the master services agreement. You structure those deals behind the scene as to how the engagement will be put together, managed, compensation, all of that. And I think that comes successful relationships like that come from, I think, the years of entrepreneurial understanding and figuring out, how relationships fit together in the best way.
Yeah.
And so that's really kind of how I'm going to market now, is separate but together.
I always look at and you have a great network, and I always look at a network as like a fallback plan. Like once you build a network and you've built respect amongst your colleagues and they know what you bring to the table, you can almost do anything. I mean, you can stop your job. I mean, you came to me, over a year ago, probably. Hey, Adam, I'm thinking about leaving the job you previously, when you were just talking about, and doing my own thing and just going back into consulting and being, starting my own thing again. And you kind of had a little hesitation there, but for me, it was like telling you, do it. What are you talking about?
Right.
Because I know your network, and I don't know your network, but I know you have a network. I know that you've got a great reputation in the community. Why wouldn't you do it? To me, I'm like, dude, what? So having that network is like, you do whatever you want. It adds flexibility to your life.
The hesitation wasn't necessarily about a confidence thing or a network thing. It was really, I think I was just in the process of determining how I wanted to craft the next wave of my work life and my personal life. So having those things come together in a way that made sense for me.
Yeah.
So, and it's been great. I mean, awesome clients, awesome projects, great collaborations with all sorts of super smart and cool people. And I've had a lot of personal time to be able to enjoy life as well and not be beholden to, 4 weeks of vacation a year.
Oh God.
Right.
If you even get that. I mean, some of the people listening to this right now, lucky to get 2.
Yep. Exactly.
And then now they've got those hybrid work from home, you're working from home 1 week of vacation, kind of thing. Where it's like, well, you're working from home every day or, so there's this negotiation now that's happening, I think, in the corporate world. And I'm not in there, so I don't know for sure. But I know there's these like hybrid models they're playing around with now where they're like, hey, you don't have to come into the office every day. You can work from home. So you're going to get that benefit, but we're going to also take some of these other benefits away from you.
Yeah, I was talking to a colleague of mine today in a meeting earlier, and he described, and I'm not familiar with it, but he said there's a term in Asia, and it might be in Japan, I can't remember exactly, but it's called lying flat, which really means being happy with where you are and the balance of work and life, and not climbing the corporate ladder and working 80 hours a week and sacrificing, everything for the company and your career. And I think we're seeing certainly a lot of that in the United States now. I mean, the mass exodus from corporate jobs and people saying, you know what, there's more to life. And, it's a nice position to be in when you can, design how you want to craft your work-life balance.
And there's more options now.
There are more options.
Because companies were forced into this, and they wouldn't have done it if this hadn't happened. Because why risk it? Like if I'm P&G and I'm going to let a whole bunch of people work from home all of a sudden and Unilever's not doing it, that's a risk. Right. But now everybody had to do it at the same time, and the sky didn't fall. So they're like, oh, well, okay. Now how do we craft this? We're going to go back to somewhat normal at some point. How do we craft this? And you're one of the few people I can have these kind of conversations with. Most folks that haven't been in corporate, they haven't, they're not business owners or whatever. They don't sit around and dwell on this stuff all the time. They don't sit around and think, like as a futurist, right? I wonder how this is going to affect things. I wonder if people going into the office is eventually going to lead to less entrepreneurship, less consultants, because now you're not in the office going to the lunches that I used to go to with people. You're not walking up to people's desk and having casual conversations, get to know you type of stuff. You're on Zoom with people now. You don't build those close connections, I think, without being face to face in some regard. How does that type of thing affect the future of these people's lives, their professional careers?
Well, I don't know much about the Gen Z work style or relationship style in mass, but it seems to me that they are less interested in face-to-face communication anyway.
Yeah.
And so we have a trend that's pushing in that direction. Certainly COVID has forced us, as we all know. I mean, it's been a topic widely discussed to interact in different ways. So I mean, I meet plenty of new people on Zoom or Teams or whatever all the time, all over the world that are in my client base. And it's honestly just like meeting in person now, at least for me.
Because you've gotten used to it. Yeah.
Well,
you've adapted and.
I think everybody has. I think it's, yeah. I prefer to see people face to face every once in a while, but it's interesting because when I was working for another firm, I was flying, 80,000 plus miles a year.
Oof.
And now I'm realizing what a waste of time it was and money. I mean, it was a huge expense. We're operating just as well or better. And honestly, this is kind of a side note. People show up on time to Zoom meetings. They don't show up on time to in-person meetings. So you're much more efficient with your time conducting business, over.
Well, you shut it off. You don't have to run downstairs, take an elevator downstairs, get in a taxi and go back to your hotel. Like you shut the computer and you go on to other things, right?
So, yeah, I think this, at least some of it is permanent. It's here to stay, forever. It's not my area of practice, but I have to assume that the expense line has improved financial performance pretty significantly for companies that were paying for a lot of travel.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I had a big company just this morning reach out to us asking us about our conference rooms here at CovWorks. And they were like, oh, do you got a space for 40 people? Do you have space? We got these meetings that are sometimes this big. We got meetings that are sometimes this big. Can you accommodate us? Is there food? All that stuff. They were just reaching out because they said, hey, sometimes we have meetings at our office, but a lot of times we like to leave the office and go off site. Mm-hmm. So you still have some of that. And as somebody who looks for opportunities, are you watching this fairly closely for your clients and just personally, like just interested in something? Are there opportunities that are arising from this? So
I do a lot of work sessions and design, innovation design sprints and things like that with clients. And there are some really cool tool sets out there that make it a lot easier. And this trend of being more virtual is boding well for those kinds of platforms. There's one called Current, which I use. Great partner. They're half collaboration software, half AI machine learning expert sourcing capability. So to run, panels of subject matter experts on a food product or, innovation or something like that, or cost savings. It's a great way to bring people together from all over the world into a platform that is asynchronous. People type in their answers. It's facilitated by a live human, someone who's somewhat of a subject matter expert in the space. And it captures the insights and the opportunities that you would do in a conference room with a whiteboard and a scribe, actually in a better way, because the client and the experts all are together collaborating, and it gives more voice to the people who typically don't say things in meetings and workshops.
Oh, interesting.
So you get a lot more participation from people that you wouldn't ordinarily get in different settings.
That's interesting. So, I mean, we're really talking about, so for side hustlers, just to kind of bring it back to the side hustle thing. If you're young, you're in corporate, kind of what I'm taking from this is your network's really important. Think about that. I mean, this is probably something you're telling your daughter, hey, do a good job, show up to work on time, be responsible, be a good employee, maybe go above and beyond, even though you don't have to. You might not be getting paid for it. Go above and beyond, because that's going to help you build your reputation with other people. They're going to see you're a hard worker. They're going to see you're an innovator. If consulting is something you may consider 20 years into your career, 25 years into your career, start out the right way. Start out on the right foot and know that people are watching, people are paying attention. Build your network so that at some point you could become an entrepreneur, but also think about some of the changes that are happening right now. We talked about opportunities and these opportunities that are arising right now because of COVID and what's going on. I mean, outside of these tools you're talking about, what about owning an Airbnb where companies go to do offsites? That's probably on the rise where, hey, we're all virtual for so long. Maybe we do something where everybody gets together. We order some food and everybody hangs out for the day and we collaborate and we talk about cool stuff. I mean, there's opportunities outside of just like the software space or whatever, being on Zoom or whatever, or just as investments. I mean, side hustle could be your portfolio, your investments that you go into. Look at some of these things and these opportunities that are rising and some of these non-traditional things that may be an effect of what's going on right now, but they don't require you to be a software developer in order to create.
So, yeah, I think underscoring, choose what your core competency is. What if you choose to be on your own or with a small group of people outside the corporate world, but choose what it is. Build your business around that. Look for the space between the notes. To fill in your ecosystem of connections, capabilities, partners, collaborators, et cetera, and build a sort of a fortified suite around what that core competency is.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the last episode, we had a lady, Susan Harrow, on here, and she prepares people for an interview with Oprah or, an interview on CNN or whatever. And she talked about personal branding. Really, when you go into your career or you maybe established in your career, it's the personal brand is really what it boils down to. I mean, you have a great personal brand. People call you because they trust your experience based on what they hear through the grapevine or their personal experience with you. But you've had to build that up over the years. And that all goes back to personal branding, right? And how you establish yourself in the minds of other people.
The more purposeful you can be, the better. However, leave room for serendipity because things change and evolve.
That's right. That's right. Great. Well, Stuart, I appreciate it. And I'm sure everyone on this listening to the podcast appreciates it. And maybe we sparked something in somebody today and made them think a little bit.
I hope so.
I hope so too. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of Side Hustle City. Well, you've heard from our guests. Now let's hear from you. Join our community on Facebook, Side Hustle City. It's a group where people share ideas, share their inspirational stories, and motivate each other to be successful and turn their side hustle into their main hustle. We'll see you there, and we'll see you next week on the show. Thank you.